feeling you? No. That nigga a munch. Nigga eat it, he ate it for lunch. Bitch, on my body, I get what I want. Like, you thought I was feeling you? That nigga a munch. Nigga eat it, he ate it for lunch. Bitch, on my body, I get what I want.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another video. It's me, it's your boy, KNG, Yes, sir, back at another video. We need these superhero games. Before we start, I don't know who he's gonna select. But aside from the obvious of Superman, the Flash, stuff like that, I'm gonna say a superhero that I would love to get their own game. Pretty good options, pretty good options. Trying to think. I feel like a game where we play as like Cable in the future. Cable is the son of Cyclops and Jean Grey. I feel like that could be cool. A game where we play as like a member of Magneto's Brotherhood of Evil, so we see the opposite point of view of what the X-Men think. You know, that could be pretty cool. Or even like a game where who does it? Is it Infamous does it? Whereas like there's two different endings, there's good, there's bad. You know, Spider-Man Web of Shadows does it as well. But a game where maybe you start off as like this mutant hating. I'm sticking solely to Marvel. I don't know why. That's all I have in my head. This mutant hater, and then you find out, oh, I'm a mutant, you know, and like now you have to choose. Do you want to join the X-Men? And it's like now you have to learn to embrace it. You know, now it's like you were once a hater, but now it's like you were welcome. You see that mutants aren't that bad, and you do want them to coexist. Or you join Magneto, where it's like people find out you're a mutant, and the people closest to you, rather than being like, hey, you know what? I still love you. We've been friends, partners, lovers, whatever for X amount of years. I still love you. Instead, they betray you. They turn you in, hunt you down, whatever the fuck. So you join Magneto, and maybe you have like parts of the game where you can switch over to the X-Men, or you can switch over to the Brotherhood. I feel like a game like that could be pretty cool. If I want to think from DC, uh, I can't think of anything. I can't think of anything. Maybe like an Elseworld thing. Like, ooh, no, never mind.
Hey guys, welcome to Cape and Kyle Cafe. I'm Nemo, and today
Never
we're going to be
mind.
talking about the top 10 superhero games that we absolutely need. If you guys enjoy the video at any point today, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe button, but let's hop right in. Alright, now, it might just be me, but I really do feel like superhero games might be at a decline. You know, after failures like Gotham Knights and Marvel's Avengers,
Gotham Knights, Marvel Avengers, those both flop. I feel like DC could have had to come back with Wonder Woman, but the game was canceled because only Batman can get games, I guess. I don't know if maybe Batman read into his contract. Oh yeah, only I get games. Everyone else can get fuck the movies. Like what? That would have been cool.
these AAA game studios might be afraid to give these heavy-hitting characters the games that they do deserve, because games like the Arkham series and Spider-Man, they're an investment, you know? It's a pretty big risk. And I know that we have Lego Batman coming out and Wolverine, but again, we haven't seen anything crazy like the Arkham series and the Spider-Man games for quite a while. You know, there's too big of a gap between these projects. Now, even though we are still getting Batman and Spider-Man games with a few others, you know, here and there, that's not all we want to see. You know, there are still so many characters that somehow don't have their own modern day video game. And not just random characters either, okay? We're talking about heavy hitters, characters with massive fan bases, rich comic book histories, and gameplay potential that could rival some of the best games ever made. So today, we're going to be going through the top 10.
Green Lantern video game. No, he already has a game. That's based off the damn movie, but still, I don't care. A Green Lantern game could be cool. Where we're like Hal Jordan would create on characters, whatever the fuck, or Guy Gardner. I feel like a Green Lantern game could be cool. and then Nickelodeon's, but yeah, I don't know, bro.
comic book characters who need a video game, breaking down what those games could look like, how they should play, and what existing games they could take inspiration from. Now, obviously, I am not a game designer, I'm not a professional, so if you hate my ideas, that's fine, Drop yours in the comments down below. Let's talk about it.
I'm gonna look at the comments.
Let's get started. All right, first up, we are going to go over some honorable mentions. We got Superman and Venom. Now, I'm not going to talk about Venom at length because we already know that Insomniac was or is making a Venom game. We don't really know what's going on, okay?
I think they were, but they canceled it. I don't know when was this video made? This video was made 3 weeks ago. Okay, so fairly recently. Yeah, I think the Venom game got canned, if I'm correct. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they said that it got canned. Oh my gosh. Like following the leaks of the shits. Pretty sure they said it got canned.
Like, maybe it's been canceled or delayed. They're not really good at communication, are they? Either way, a Venom game would be sick, and he definitely is a big enough character by himself without Spider-Man that, like, it's kind of a necessity at this point, in time.
What is he running?
It's 2026 and we don't have a Venom game. And when it comes to Superman, honestly, I don't know, okay? I've seen a million people give their concepts for what a Superman game should be, and honestly, I don't even think there's one perfect way to do it, I think you just have to grab an idea, commit to it, and send it, But all of these game studios are just so afraid of the character and the potential that they just won't even touch him. I don't know if the game should be set in space or in Metropolis. I don't know if you should make the enemy stronger or make Superman weaker to compensate for the power difference. It's a video game, okay?
Superman game, it could be, of course, an origin, and as the game goes on, I guess Superman, yeah, as the game goes on, the game gets more difficult. But rather than it being like, hey, medium, I guess kind of like a Souls-like, whereas like there's no difficulty, but like as the game goes, like as the chapters progress, or whatever the fuck, the main bosses and like side bosses and whatever, they all get more difficult. So maybe we play as Superman, first 6 months, cool, you're putting belt to ass. The game is coming to an end. You're facing General Zod, and you were putting belt to ass to everyone. Now here you are struggling like Kai Cenat beating the Scarlet Rot. You're over here just like, oh my gosh, bro. Like, bro, I was just putting a belt to ass. What's going on? I don't know, something like that.
It doesn't matter at the end of the day. The God of War series has Kratos, the God of War, going up against these random little foot soldiers, from all the 9 realms. And obviously none of them should hold a candle to the God of War, but they can still be challenging enemies because it's a video game. At the end of the day, it does not matter if the enemies are as strong or if they seem like they can kill Superman. It's a video game. You can die. End of story.
Yeah.
All right, starting off the real list on number 10, we have The Winter Soldier. Now, I feel like this game pretty much writes itself. You lean fully into that espionage spy thriller vibe. Think secret missions, assassinations.
And then we could do it in like a Hitman or like a 007 style. Or other games. That's only two that you might know.
Covering government conspiracies tied to Hydra or some other shadow organization. And I feel like all you gotta do is just make a game that's a perfect love child between Metal Gear Solid, Splinter Cell, and Hitman. And then it's perfect. You have a Winter Soldier game. Now, in order for this to work, I think you really have to set this game during Bucky's time as the Winter Soldier while he's under the control of Hydra. So it would lean a lot into the Hitman side of things where you're kind of carrying out contracts, eliminating targets. Like, you can have a variety of tools at your disposal, different maps to play on. You can solve puzzles using the metal arm, stuff like that. It would all just be so cool. And I mean, it's implied that Bucky is responsible for some of the most important and biggest assassinations in history. So you could just recreate some of those as, stealth levels, but play as the Winter Soldier. You could also have a mission where you kill Tony Stark's parents. It would just be so cool. Now,
still Team Tony, bro. Don't give a fuck. It's Big T over here. Big T. All right, still Big T, bro.
Like I said before, this would just be a stealth game, okay? Bucky as the Winter Soldier, especially, when he's mind-controlled, he should just function kind of like a mixture of Snake and Agent 47 from Hitman. And the gameplay should be essentially the same thing. You know, there would be a lot of stealth, but you'd also have some really good combat. That way, the gameplay doesn't feel as stiff and restricted as Hitman, but you have a lot more options, kind of like Metal Gear Solid. Now, while I personally think that this game would work really well if it was set during Bucky's time as the Winter Soldier in the past, if you want to have this game take place in the modern day where he's working alongside Captain America or with Falcon or by himself, you could also just have those Hydra missions as flashbacks and they would just be part of the story. But I mean, come on. If this game was done right, it could be one of the coolest stealth games ever made, and it would just so happen that it would be under a Marvel title, you know?
Yeah.
Win-win. All right, next up at number 9, we have Shazam. Now, I think Shazam is one of the most underrated characters when it comes to video game potential. Now, obviously, the biggest hook here is the transformation mechanic. You're not just going to be playing as Shazam, but you're going to be doing some gameplay sequences as Billy Batson. Maybe the game will let you switch between them at will, but this alone opens up...
Oh, for the Winter Soldier one, it would be cool if they had like the Nemesis system. Like if, you know, you lose to someone, then they clown you, or if you beat someone, then whoever's like their second in command or whatever, like, yo, like you kill my man, you kill my girl, you know, and then they get like maybe a buff or something like that. They get a buff, I don't know, man. I'm just talking. I'm not
some
the
really
gameplay
interesting
maker.
gameplay. Billy could handle exploration, puzzles, and social interactions, while Shazam would handle the combat and destruction, the superhero stuff. Now, I could see this functioning a lot like Ben 10 Protector of Earth, this old PS2 game from the 2000s. I played a ton of it as a kid. Now, the game had you switching between Ben and all of these aliens, and you kind of had to pick which one was right for the situation. Like, Ben could do some things that the aliens couldn't, like he could fit into tight spaces, and some of the aliens obviously had powers that Ben did not have. So, depending on the puzzle that you were encountering, you had to choose which form was the best for the situation. And I think the same thing really does apply for Shazam and Billy Batson. Now, when it comes to the gameplay, I feel like you could just mix God of War and Infamous, and that would work pretty well. You have the really destructive God of War style combat where the camera's up nice and close, and you get to see the power that Shazam has. And, you know, you also bring in some of the mechanics from Infamous with the lightning and all of the magical abilities and stuff like that. But God of War also has a decent amount of puzzle solving. Now, in that game, you have a secondary character, Atreus, who you can command to solve puzzles and do stuff for you. But in this game, instead of having a secondary character, you would just transform into them. And I feel like that would work really well for a Shazam game. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. A gameplay developer might get their hands on this kind of IP and just make boring MJ-style missions with Billy Batson. Like, you have Billy Batson sneaking out of class, and he's got to slowly creep his way through the hallways, avoiding teachers. I feel like that's not the way to do it. What you got to do is make it entertaining by mixing the two, I guess, forms together in one gameplay sequence, you know? Like that flashback mission from Spider-Man 2 where you gotta, you know, sneak through the high school as Peter, but he gets to use his powers, so it's still entertaining and interesting, and it's not just, oh, I was playing as this god and now I'm just a regular kid. That would be lame, you know? Mix the two personalities, have them interact with each other. That would be the best way to go, in my opinion. Alright, next up at number 8, we have Blade. Now, seriously, how was Blade not gotten a modern AAA game yet?
Forgot all about this game. Oh my gosh, where's the game? Same thing with Black Panther in 1943 or Captain America in 1943, whatever the fuck. A Black Panther game would be cool too. Yeah. Black Panther game would be cool.
It feels like a no-brainer, okay? He's a vampire killer. What more do you want with a game? Now, I thought of this after playing as Blade during the Zombies event in Marvel Rivals. Obviously, they would have to tone down the gameplay from that because he was just insane, okay? Blade should not be spinning as fast as a rusted PS4 fan in his own AAA game. That would just be ridiculous. Now, I really do feel like this is one of the easiest wins on this list. All you gotta do is take the combat style from something like Devil May Cry or some of the earlier God of War games, mix it in with a darker tone, add some vampires, and you've got an absolute gold mine. Now, the gameplay in this game would revolve around fast, brutal melee combat with the swords, and you can combine it with some gadgets and firearms. You'd have cool sword combos and vampire killing finishing moves. This really just should be a home run. Like, it's not that hard. Now, I think I would make this game a level-based experience, so I wouldn't have open worlds for Blade to explore. It would just be levels, and I would fill those levels to the brim with vampires. You know, you'd have a few different puzzles, but for the most part, this would just be a hack and slash game where Blade is just ripping through hundreds and hundreds of enemies.
I hope
It
that
would just
Blade
be
game don't
absolutely
get canceled.
insane.
I
And it
wanna
wouldn't
play that
have to be
game.
boring because you could have different enemy types, you know, different types of vampires, supernatural creatures, bunch of boss fights. This could be one of the coolest monster horror games we have ever seen. The potential is unreal. But if anything, Blade's game needs to be just ridiculously violent, okay? This would obviously be a rated M game, and now that we're getting Wolverine and we've seen what that game kind of looks like, I don't think that's too far-fetched or unrealistic. All right, next up at number 7, we have Iron Man. Now, Iron Man is long overdue for an actual modern-day game. I know we had that VR one, and there was a mobile game, and he's had some PS2 games, but none of that counts. You know, we need an actual Iron Man.
A War Machine game could be pretty cool. I was thinking War Machine, but like, I don't know what it would be based on and stuff like that. But a War Machine game could be cool.
Game. Now, the core of this game should be the movement, okay? The flight has to feel perfect, and if it doesn't, it's just not going to work. Now, I think that Marvel's Avengers had some decent controls for Iron Man, but it really lacked the speed and energy that it needed to be impactful. So I feel like this should just be a mix of Anthem and Just Cause. Now, if any of you guys have played Just Cause 3,
Just Cause, yes.
especially with like the jetpack booster thing that you get in the DLC, that's like a peak Iron Man game without actually playing as Iron Man. And Anthem, while the game did flop and it sucks, some of the gameplay is actually really fun, and the flying mechanics, some of them like would work for an Iron Man game. It's kind of ridiculous. Now, I don't know what the story would be, or if it would be open world or level based, but I feel like the focus needs to be on the movement and the combat. Now, the combat would be all about versatility. You'd have hundreds of different types of weapons, and I do mean hundreds when I say that, because this is Iron Man, okay? He needs to be fully stacked when it comes to his weapons. Repulsors, missiles, lasers. You're basically just a giant flying armory. Now, the real depth would come from the customization, because obviously you can't be using all of these weapons at once. So it would be really cool to not only unlock a bunch of different Iron Man suits, but be able to build your own, and you could customize your different loadouts and playstyles and weapons, and you could change the way the suit looks. This would just be so cool to see, and it would, you know, drive player engagement up a lot if they were actually involved in the stuff that they were unlocking, and it wouldn't just be a basic looter shooter. Like, the gear that you're unlocking and collecting actually has value, and it changes the way that you play, and it's not just going to be a bunch of numbers flying around on the screen, because nobody likes numbers, okay? That's boring, you know? Show me what I've earned by letting me customize the way it looks, and like kind of like Gotham Knights, but without all of the number crap, because they did it too, and it sucked there. So they would have to completely change the system, but I really do feel like that if you were able to customize your Iron Man suit and your loadout, that would just be so cool. Now, when it comes to the level design and the world, I don't know if an open world like New York would be best for Iron Man, because it would get really boring really fast to just fly around New York at supersonic speeds, and you would see everything pretty quickly. What I think they should do is kind of like, I keep referencing this game, but it's honestly peak. If they did something like God of War Ragnarok, where they have a bunch of different mini open worlds, you know, you could have Iron Man travel to different sections of the world, taking on different groups of terrorists and supervillains. I think that would be the best way to go, because you would be able to explore a huge variety of different, you know, locations and areas, and it wouldn't just be New York. Like, that's going to get really boring when you're flying the speed that Iron Man does. But seriously, if this is done right, this could be one of the most satisfying power fantasies in gaming. It would be crazy. I feel like this could be way more successful and way more impactful than a Superman game. I don't know. Might just be me. All right, next up at number 6, we have the Hulk. Now, a Hulk game needs to do one thing above all else. You have to feel absolutely unstoppable, okay? That is a non-negotiable for a game about the Hulk. Now, we've had some Hulk games before, but none of them really hit the way that they should have. Like, he made an appearance in the Avengers game, and some of his mechanics were pretty good. They were serviceable. And I think the closest that we've gotten, though, to a good Hulk game was Ultimate Destruction, but that game's just old now. You know, it's outdated. It doesn't hold a candle to, you know, games that are coming out today. So I feel like if you just remade that game with a lot of the same ideas, but with modern day technology, it could be absolutely insane. But seriously, in order for this game to be successful, it needs to be intense. Like, fully destructible environments, crazy physics
Yes.
and movement, like the
Yes.
super jumps that Hulk's always pulling off, and they send him flying across.
I need to be able to break everything in that bitch. What is that?
The map. We need the thunderclap, all of the different classic Hulk moves, and seriously, with the destructible environments, like buildings need to be collapsing because of the combat and the moves that you're pulling off on enemies. And not all of the enemies have to be these huge Hulk, Avengers level threats that, can actually take down the Hulk. We don't need to be fighting a bunch of monsters all the time. The Hulk goes up against the army all the time, and maybe the army's developing different weapons that kind of weaken you or, actually pose a threat. But for the most part, I feel like you should just be jumping around the desert and like smaller towns and just destroying everything. That would be so cool. All right, next up at number 5, we have the Punisher.
I was thinking Punisher as well, but I was like, I don't know. He's already had a game. I was thinking like this is for people who've never had a game. That's what I was thinking. The Punisher. Oh my gosh. Definitely. Definitely.
Now, this would just be a shooter game. Like, duh. Let's keep it simple. Now, the way that this one would work for me is you just have this set during the Punisher's first week, operating as a lethal vigilante. You make this an emotional story about him going on this quest for vengeance and trying to find the people who are responsible for his family's murders. That's the best way to do it, because the Punisher can sometimes be a little boring when he's just going around, killing criminals for no reason. And there's not really a ton of story behind it. Like, we know the Punisher does what he does because he's the Punisher, but I feel like there's way more of an emotional impact when he's doing it for a reason, and what better reason than avenging your loved ones? And I feel like after he does that, there are not a ton of stories for you to tell with the Punisher that don't include, him interacting with other heroes, and I don't think that this should be a cameo fest, Maybe have Daredevil show up, or, maybe Spider-Man. I doubt that would ever happen, but for the most part, this should just be about Punisher, and it's kind of hard to tell a story about him that doesn't include other heroes, so just make it about his first week operating as the Punisher. Now, gameplay-wise, I'm feeling you just mix Max Payne with The Last of Us, and you have a pretty perfect Punisher experience. Like, I feel like there's not a ton to talk about here. You just make a shooter game with Frank Castle as the main character, and you give him an armory where he has every deadly weapon known to man. Explosives, traps, guns, knives, swords, rocket launchers, vehicles, everything, okay? This shouldn't be that hard.
That's what she said.
All right, next up at number 4, we have Wonder Woman. Now, we actually had a game for Wonder Woman being developed by Monolith Studios, but as we all know, WB Games shut them down, so that's no longer happening. What a missed opportunity. And I mean, with that studio's track record, I feel like her gameplay would have been a perfect mix of God of War, Assassin's Creed, and Shadow of Mordor, especially with the Nemesis system, which I think we can all assume would have been in that game, but now it's pretty much gone forever. Like, we can just assume that. It's gone. Never coming back. Like, there was just so much potential here. Like, the combat alone would have been absolutely crazy, especially if you included the sword and shield along with the lasso. Now, the lasso could have been one of the most versatile tools in gaming ever. Like, you could have used that thing for puzzles and combat, interrogations, like traversal.
Don't worry, I'm listening.
It would have been so good. Combat would have felt powerful and graceful, swordplay, shield combat, you'd have crazy godlike abilities, you could deflect projectiles with the bracelets. It all just would have been so peak, and I'm saying would have because I doubt that anyone's gonna pick this up again. I feel like that was probably our one chance, and this won't happen again for like another 10 to 15 years, if it ever does. Now, when it comes to the setting and the world, I feel like you could just make the whole game take place on Themyscira, like maybe some dark, evil army invades, like Hades or something, and the whole game takes place there. You gotta defend it. So it wouldn't be like a huge, massive open world, but it would still be pretty sizable. You'd have plenty of locations to see, tons of opportunities for exploration and collectibles and all kinds of, stuff like that. Maybe you could also add some like platforming mechanics, kind of like the Prince of Persia games. I don't know. So much potential here. All of it wasted. What a shame. All right, next up at number 3, we have Daredevil. Now, I'm about to sound really lame and derivative saying this, but this should just be a mix between Batman and Spider-Man, okay?
It should
be. Like, you have the crazy traversal of Spider-Man with the combat, and all of the cool dodging mechanics, because he essentially has a spider sense too. He's got the radar sense, so he can see bullets coming and projectiles. He can dodge out of the way. But then you also have a lot of the same combat mechanics from the Arkham series and the detective vision. Like, Daredevil's radar sense in this game has to be insane. And I think the, craziest example of a detective vision that we've seen is in the Arkham games, because like every single game now has some version of detective vision where you hit L1 or R3 and you scan the area, whether it's like a toggle or it just lasts for a second. All games have some function where you get to see, enemies highlighted through walls, and you get to see, points of interest and traps and stuff like that. It's just a staple. It's going to happen. But for Daredevil, like, it's absolutely necessary because it's one of his core abilities. And no, the entire game should not be from Matt Murdock's perspective, okay? You, the player, are not blind. You want to see the game. You want to see the environments. You want to see Daredevil and the costumes and, all that good stuff. So I think it should just be a toggleable ability that you turn on. You should not be playing the game like a blind person. That would just be ridiculous, okay? It would be jarring, and it would get tiring and annoying really fast. Now, while the Daredevil part of the gameplay should be like a mix of Batman and Spider-Man with, visceral combat and like fast traversal, I feel like you could also tell a really good story with the Matt Murdock half of his life. Now, if you want to like kind of split this game to where it's half action adventure game and half Telltale game, I feel like that would be really interesting, because imagine the other half of the game takes place in the courtroom and you're making decisions and choosing dialogue options as Matt Murdock, the lawyer. I feel like that would be really interesting, and especially if those courtroom scenes affects the open world and stuff that happens outside, with the rest of the Daredevil stuff. It would just be so cool to see. You could be giving case files on different criminals and, kind of try to figure out who's lying, if people are actually guilty or innocent. And during the trials, you could listen to heartbeats and see if there's anything going on with the jury, like if there's anyone there with a bomb or something. Like, I know that happens in courtrooms sometimes, like BVS. I don't know how courtrooms work. I've never been to court, but I think this would be so cool. All right, next up at number 2, we got Batman. And yes, Batman's on this list, and I know what you're thinking.
Interesting.
But Batman already has games. Yes, okay, he does. And he has some of the best superhero games ever made. And
I was thinking Batman as well, but I was thinking specifically, how do I spell M-E-D-I? Wow, M-E-D-I-V-A-L. Tomato to fucking model, bro. Damn, I was thinking, like, is it not an actual? Could have sworn it. Maybe I should look up. Sorry. Like, like take place in like medieval times, so we're not super high tech and all that stuff. Like, we got, you know what I'm saying? Like that's not cold to y'all. No, you say get back to the video. Push up, push up, push up, push up, push up, push up, push up. My bad, my bad, my bad, my bad. I let it, 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 I let it,
does he need more? Probably not, but I love Batman, so I don't think they should stop there. It's time for the next evolution, though, of Batman games. Okay, we don't need another Arkham game, and if they did, it shouldn't be a continuation of Knight or another prequel. Like, I think we should either get a Batman Arkham Beyond, or just reboot the Arkham series and start a new continuity and kind of change the gameplay a little bit. Make a new series of Batman games. Like, there's not a ton to talk about here. It's just a Batman game. We all know what they entail. You got the gliding, you got the Batmobile, the gadgets, the combat, the stealth. We all know what we want. We just want to see more of it. So, yeah. Now, with Batman Beyond, there's way more potential. I mean, first off, you have a main character who's, for the most part, unknown. Like, no one in the general audience knows who Batman Beyond is. And as sad as that is to say, I feel like it's actually an advantage, because you can do whatever you want with this game. I know that there's, previous continuity with the show and the comics, and he's made a few appearances in animated movies and stuff like that, but for the most part, you can just do whatever you want. Just make a new continuity, tell a new story. If you want to tweak his origin a little bit.
I'm still not done with it. I think I'm on like season 2. I have it written in my notes.
I'm sure most people won't really care, because he's just that fresh of a character. He's never been done in any major way. Now, I'm not going to dive too deep into the gameplay or the story or anything because I already made a video pitching a Batman Beyond game, so check that one out after this video. Alright, coming at number 1, we have Green Arrow. That's right, my number 1 pick is not Batman or Superman or The Flash. It's Green Arrow, and I feel like he has the most potential when it comes to a video game. Now, I think we've all played a video game before that has a bow and arrow. It's a very popular weapon for video games, but it's usually a secondary weapon. It's an afterthought, you know? It's all about the guns. Now, imagine if they made a game that was just all about the bow and arrow. I know there's a few of them that, you know, do feature them heavily, like the Ghost of Tsushima series or Horizon Zero Dawn. But with Green Arrow, you could really just take this whole bow and arrow gimmick to the next level, okay? No guns, no extra little weapons or gadgets, just the bow and arrow and like a million trick arrows. That's what I'm thinking. Now, I mean, gameplay-wise,
he has a playbook. I never knew Hawkeye has a thing. Well, I know like. I know that. So that means like as he's fighting, he's probably like feeling on it to see like, wow, that's crazy.
The archery needs to be the core focus, okay? Not just like a secondary gimmick like I just mentioned. We're talking about a fully fleshed out system where different arrow types completely change the way you approach encounters. Like you got standard arrows, explosive ones for crowd control, EMP arrows for tech-based enemies, smoke arrows for stealth encounters, grappling arrows for movement and traversal. Of course, you gotta have the boxing glove arrow. The possibilities are truly endless, and this would just be so fun. Now, the stealth sections could be a lot like Arkham, you know, where you're put in a room or like some big environment and you got a bunch of enemies to take down, but instead of sneaking up behind them one at a time and choking them out, you should just be more like hiding up in the rafters, using your trick arrows to set traps and kind of set the stage before everyone just gets taken out at once. It would be so satisfying, and honestly, that was the best way to play Arkham Knight to begin with. Now, yes, the stealth sections in a game like this could be vulnerable to cheesing, kind of like the Jason Todd sections in Arkham Knight where you're just shooting everyone as the Red Hood and it takes like 10 seconds. Because Green Arrow is a ranged character, he's got a bow and arrow, but I feel like you could, you know, get around this problem. You could just have enemies that have armor or something that makes them immune to regular arrows, so you got to use more creative ways to take them out. Because, I mean, as Green Arrow, you're probably not going to be sneaking around behind enemies, taking them out one at a time, like I said, but you got to be setting traps, you got to be creative with the way you're doing it. Now, because Green Arrow as a character uses projectile-based ranged combat, he probably would have some kind of focus meter where everything slows down around him while he's aiming, so you could hit some crazy trick shots or ricochet arrows or, you know, just hit your targets more easily. Like, I do think it's a little lazy in some games when you can just slow down time while you're aiming, but I mean, for a game where you're using a bow and arrow, I feel like it's kind of a necessity. Every game that has a bow and arrow has this. Like, Ghost of Tsushima has it. I think Horizon Zero Dawn has it. GTA has it. Like, everyone has it. It's just the standard. So I feel like they would put it in this game, and honestly, I don't mind either way. Now, when it comes to the setting and the world, I do feel like it might be a detriment to just place him in another open world city. Like, he does have Star City, yeah, but you know, people are going to be drawing comparisons between that and Gotham City from the Arkham games or New York from Spider-Man. And, you know, it's just something we've seen before. Like, yeah, it would be fun with the traversal mechanics, especially if you can shoot out zip lines and you're grappling and swinging everywhere. But I feel like Green Arrow would be way more fun on the island. Like, it doesn't have to be his origin story where he's stuck there for 5 years, but maybe he goes back to the island later in his career to face off, you know, some kind of threat from his past. Maybe it's Deathstroke or Malcolm Merlin or Onomatopoeia or something. I don't know. Either way, I feel like the island would be a way better setting for this game. I just think that this game has so much potential. And I mean, honestly, I feel like setting it on the island would really help differentiate Green Arrow from Batman because they are similar, okay? The combat and the stealth sections probably would play out in very similar fashions, but Green Arrow is still very different from Batman. I mean, Batman doesn't have a bow and arrow with a million different types of trick arrows. He just doesn't. But I know I've said it for some of the others on this list, but seriously, if they did this game right, this could be one of the best superhero games ever made. Alright guys, that's going to be it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it all, I'd really...
He has some really good ideas. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to lie to you. He had really good ideas. A Sifu like Iron Fist. Yes, yes. A Doom-like game for Hulk. Yeah. If this James Bond's game, it's a soldier. Hey man, he had really good ideas. He had some really good ideas. I'm not gonna hold you, my boy. That's a really good ass ideas. He did.
領域展開無料空所